Hi, it's Kevin Trainer, and I'd like to welcome you to the tutorial demo on for Chapter 4 of the Java text. And this one is going to be called Longest Shortest. And this has a couple of skills in it that relate to the homework exercises. And you're going to recognize this as being pretty similar to one of the ones that you're going to have to do. Here's the requirements. We're going to get a number of character strings. Okay, how are we going to get them? We're going to get them from the scanner, from the console. Okay, so we're going to ask the user how many character strings they would like to give us, and then on the basis of how many they say, we're going to use a for loop, and we're going to, in the for loop, we're going to get a character string, and then we're going to figure out how long it is, okay? And as we go through the character strings, let's say they say we're going to get 5, so we're going to get 5 character strings in, okay? And then we're going to say how long was the longest and how short was the shortest. Now, we're not going to save the longest or save the shortest. We just want to do it in kind of a simple way, okay? This is going to build on the last of the demos that we did where we did the max of 3 ints, because we're going to use the same kind of principle pattern for solving the problem. Okay, so let's, we're in our Chapter 4 demo. Let's go to the default package, create a new class. And let's call it longest shortest. And let's give it a main. Okay. Okay, so there it is, longest shortest. Okay. And you remember that I said that we're going to use a console. Okay. Now there really isn't anything that we're doing here that we couldn't just all do in code that we're going to put into main, okay? But before, when we used the console, we declared it in main and we passed it as a parameter to a method that we called. And it's just a way to practice passing a parameter that is of the object type. And we're going to do that again. So let's create a scanner. So scanner is the name of the class that we use to type it. Scanner my scanner equals new. No capitalization for new. Scanner. And then what file do we want to create the scanner for? Well, the input portion of the console, which we know from experience is called system.in. Okay, so that's a scanner for the console. You'll remember that we need to add an import. So let's double click on that to highlight it. Right click, say source, add import, whoosh, we have an import to java.util.scanner. Why didn't we have to pick from a list? Well, we didn't have to pick from a list because of all the packages that the compiler can see right now, all the libraries that have been added to our project. There's only one class called scanner, and it's in the package java.util. And so it didn't have to ask us to choose. There was only one choice, and it just slammed an import in for us. Okay. All right, so now we're just going to put all of our work into a method. Okay. And let's call it determine longest and shortest strings. string lengths. Okay, so we don't care about the string values, just the lengths. And of course, we're going to have to get input from the console, and so let's pass my scanner. Okay. All right, that looks pretty good. All right, now determine should have another E in it. Now, I purposely use the name of this method before I declared it because I want to use a trick, and that is it's going to give us an error that says I don't know that method, and if we hover over it, it's going to offer a quick fix to it's going to offer to build it for us. So let's hover over it, and one quick fix available, create the method. Let's do it. Now the nice thing here is that it has created everything that we want. Okay, it's created something a little bit different. See that private? I'll get back to private in a minute. Okay, so in fact, I just want to change that to public for right now. Okay, so we'll say public. So public static void. Now here's the name of the method. Determine longest and shortest string lengths. It's pretty descriptive, but it's long. And what are we passing in? A scanner called myScanner. I always like the name of the formal parameter in the method that we're calling to be different than the actual parameter that we're passing, to emphasize to myself and to you that we are actually passing it. We're just not referring out to the original variable. We are getting past a, in this case, we're getting past a pointer to a scanner object. So a lot of times in the called code, I'll distinguish it by calling it something like the scanner. Okay, just to prove that we are referring to the scanner in the code. Okay, so let's plan out our work. You know, in the textbook, they talk about, in one of the chapters we've already covered, they talk about pseudocode. So the pseudocode is English-like code that we use to kind of rough out the design of our Java code, and they give us a pretty good way to do it. What I do instead of just formal pseudocode, I'm going to put a number of comments in, single line comments, that are going to describe how we're going to solve the problem. Okay, and then we'll go fill it in. Okay, so we're come up with a design, a plan for the solution, and then we're going to go implement it. So what's the first thing that we're going to do? Okay, we're going to determine how many strings user would like to enter. Okay. Okay. And then we're going to for each string, what are we going to do? Let's just act like this is going to be Java code. This is kind of pseudocode. So for each string, prompt for string. Okay. So we're going to prompt for the string. Determine the length of the string, right? That looks good. All right. What's the next thing that we want to do? Okay. Let's do something before we do this. Okay. We need to do something for the first time through. Okay. For the first string, okay, we're going to assume we're going to get its length, get length. Assume length of first string is longest. And then we're going to assume length of string of first string is shortest. Okay. All right. All right. Well, this makes sense. Okay. So we're going to do that for the first string. Okay. And then we're going to do things for the rest of the strings. Okay. So this is the same. And I'm going to put a little curly bracket there. So that's real it's real pseudocode. Okay. So we treat the first one specially. Okay. We just assume that it's both the shortest and the longest. Is it? Well, we've only seen one. Okay. And when you've only seen one, it's the biggest, it's the shortest, it's the best, it's the worst, it's everything you've seen. If you only have one, comparatively, it is at the top of the heap because it's a heap of one. Okay, and this is what we did when we were doing max of 3. We started out by saying the first one is the max. Well, here we're not only saying the first one is the max, we're saying the first one is the max, the first one is the min. Okay, because it's the only one we've seen. And now what we're going to do is instead of individually writing the code for each subsequent 1, 2, 3, 4, we're going to have a more general approach than we had in max of 3 hints. We're going to have a loop, okay, that is going to go through the second string, the third string, the fourth string, the fifth string, and if that string is longer than the longest one so far, then it's going to update the value that we're keeping for the longest. If it's shorter than the shortest one so far, it's going to update the one that we have for the shortest. So what's that look like? Well, it looks like this. If this string length is greater than longest, and longest equals this string length. Okay, does that make sense? Got that. And then we're going to have a separate if. If this string length is less than the shortest, then we're going to do a similar thing. We're going to save that. We're going to say shortest equals this string length. right? All right, we have that. So we're doing that for each string. So we're going to prompt for the string, and then we're going to do the right thing. And then that's just going to be the end of our loop. Okay, sorry. It's going to be the end of our loop right there. It's the end of our for loop. And then what's the pseudocode going to look for the last part? Well, then we're just going to print out the answers. Okay. Okay, so we're going to say print longest print shortest. Okay. Okay, so this isn't Java. This is Java-like. You kind of get an idea of what code we're going to write, but we put it into comments, and this is classic pseudocode. So if you want to know a little bit more about pseudocode, look in the book. I think it's I think pseudocode's in chapter 2. It might be in chapter 1. Could be in chapter 3. I know it's not in chapter 4. Okay, but give it a look because it's an interesting idea. Okay, doing pseudocode before you create your code gives you the opportunity to map out the solution without wrestling with the syntax of the Java programming language. Okay, because pseudocode's pretty forgiving. It doesn't have to compile. Okay, so let's determine how many strings the user would like to enter. Okay, let's do this. So let's prompt. Let's prompt the user. Please enter number of strings please enter number of strings to be considered. I don't want to say entered because that's a little confusing. Okay, do that. All right, and then what are we going to do? Well, then we're going to compare. We're going to scan. So let's that's going to be an integer number, right? So let's declare an int string quantity equals, and then what are we calling the scanner? Well, we're calling it the scanner in this code because that's what we passed it in as. Next int. Okay, and for right now, let's just assume that they are going to say at least 1. Okay, we'll see. They're going to say at least 1. Okay, so let's now. Here's something that I want to do. I want to change my design just a little bit. See how I say for each string and then I have the first string? Okay. How about if we do this? How about we say for each string, how about if we move that up top? Why don't we say for each string, we want to do this. Okay. And then let's get rid of the difference here. We're only going to have one block of code. Okay. So let's say for each string, and then let's just take this code and move it out. 1. Okay. That's a little ugly there, but that's what it is. So let's undo that, and let's just put 4 spaces. I think it's 3 spaces. 1, 2, 3. 1, 2, 3. 1, 2, 3. Okay. And 1, 2, 3. So let's say if the first string, if this is the first string, if a first string, then we're going to get the length. We're going to assume this is the length of the longest. We're going to assume this is the length of the shortest. Okay. Oh, no. The first thing we're going to do is prompt for string. So we're going to have to prompt for string before we decide whether we have the first one. We're always going to want to prompt for string. All right. So going to have to turn that into a comment again. All right. That looks good. So prompt for string, if it's the first string, then we're going to save the values. Oh, prompt for string, get length. Let's always put that there. So let's always get length. Prompt for string, get length. Okay. Now we're going to ask if it's the first string. Okay. If it's the first string, we're going to move these things. We don't have to determine the length of the string because we've already done that. Okay. Now we're going to say if this new string is the longest, then move the length to longest, which is holding the longest. If it's the shortest, move it to the shortest, and we're going to go around to each of the strings, right? And then we're going to be done. Okay, that looks pretty good. All right, again, we did it in pseudocode first. All right, so how are we going to do this? Well, this is what we're going to do. Let's have a for loop for each string. Okay, say for I, yeah, let's say I, int I equals string quantity. We could have used just string quantity as the control variable, but it's a little long to be using as a control variable name. Okay. I less than, or I'm sorry, I starts at 1. Wrong. The test is I less than or equal to string quantity. And then I++. Okay? So that's going to give us just the number of strings that we ask for. Okay? All right, that sounds good. So let's get the bottom of that loop going. Okay, now, so far, we're talking about having a variable that'll hold the shortest and a variable hold the longest, but they're not declared yet. Okay, so how about before we start our loop, we declare them? Okay, looks good. So before we start our loop, let's say int longest. And are we going to give it an initial value? Yeah, why not? Let's say the longest is equal to 0. Okay. And let's say int shortest. Let's say that that is equal to 0, 2. Okay. That's going to keep the compiler from complaining to us. Okay, so we have those before we go into our loop. Here's our loop. What did we want to do in the loop? Well, first thing we want to do was to prompt for string. I forgot to say that we needed to get the string, right? And then get the length and then blah, blah, blah. Okay, so let's prompt for the string. Okay, so let's say sysout. Good. Control space. And let's say, please enter string. And then let's concatenate on the number I. And then let's concatenate on a colon and a space. So it's going to say, please enter string 1, please enter string 2 as we go through this. Okay, that looks good. Okay, and now we're let's declare something to hold our string. So let's say string the string equals, and let's use our scanner object. Okay, the scanner the scanner next. Okay, so that's going to put the string into the string. Okay, great. Now what is the next thing? Well, we need to get the length. Okay, so let's say int the length equals the string. It's a string object. You can just ask it to compute its length. Now we've saved it in the length. Okay. All right. Now we want to do special treatment for the first string through, just like we did in the last of our demos. If this one is the first one, we have to remember to save its length as both the shortest and the longest. Okay, so how do we know if this is the first one? Well, we know this is the first one if I is equal to 1, if this is the first time through. Okay, so if I equal 1, remember we need to do that. We can use equal for the test because this is a primitive, it's an int. So if I equal 1, then what are we going to do? Well, we're going to do two things. We're going to assume the length of the first string is the longest, and I'm going to do that for the shortest. So we're going to say longest gets assigned the value the length. And then we're going to say shortest gets assigned the value the length. Okay? And that's just the trick of the method that we're using. The first one you see is it's the longest, it's the shortest, it's the prettiest, it's the ugliest, it's the lightest, it's the heaviest, it's the reddest, it's the bluest. It is, we're only comparing one, so it's going to qualify no matter what the test. Okay? It might not be blue at all, but it's still the bluest one we've seen yet. All right? All right, so now we're down through that part of our pseudocode. Okay, so let's say that this is not the first one. Okay. Now, if it's the first string, we're going to do that. Now this is kind of interesting because I have these tests just out in the open, and I'm thinking what I might want to do is I only want, if it's the first time through, then it's enough to do this work. It's all the rest of the times I want to do these two if tests. So let's take these two ifs we have down here, and let's hang them off of an else. Okay? You'll see what I mean in a minute. Else, code block. Okay. And now I'll put this code in here, because the first time through, this is the work we always want to do. Every other time through, it depends on if we have found a new longest or a new shortest. So we say if the length is less than shortest, then code block. We're always going to use a code block, even though we don't have to. We consider that to be good form. So if string length is like, no, let's say is greater than the longest, because we're doing longest before shortest. Let's keep things organized the same way. So let's not jump around. So if it's longer than longest, greater than longest, then we have a new longest. So longest gets assigned the value, the length. Okay. And then let's ask separately if the length is less than the shortest, and then there's a code block. And in that case, the shortest is going to get assigned the value, the length. Now, it's possible that you could have had an if, you could have put the last of the test hanging off of an else. It could have been an else if. I think that makes the code harder to read. Okay, so we've got two situations. One, we've got the processing for the first string in. And then here we've got the processing for every other string. So we're always going to take action on the first one. Okay? On the second, third, fourth, fifth, sixth, we're only going to take action if we found a new longest or if we found a new shortest. Okay, and then do we have anything else in here? No, that looks like it's the end of that code. Okay, so that's the end of all that. Okay, so that's pseudocode. That's a little long for me. So I'm going to, well, first I'm going to put the pseudocode before the actual code. So let's cut that out and we can throw it up here. I'm not going to keep it in the long run, but that's just to leave that there. Okay, now we come down now, we want to print the longest and we want to print the shortest. So how are we going to do this? Well, let's say sysout. The longest string is plus longest plus space long, period. Okay, the longest string is longest long, and then let's say sysout. The shortest string is space, and concatenate shortest. And then space long, period. Okay, so that looks pretty good. All right, and nothing after that. Okay, that looks pretty good to me. Okay, so let's just go and look at the pseudocode again. We only did the pseudocode for the method that we called because the main was pretty straightforward. Determine how many strings user would like to enter. So we prompted and then we used the scanner to get the next int. Then we declare the longest and the shortest. Let's put the declaration of the longest and the shortest down in front of the actual code instead of in front of actual pseudocode. The pseudocode. Okay. All right. So then the pseudocode for the loop that does the bulk of the work, we've got that. And then we come down here, have we implemented? Yeah, so we've assumed we declared longest and shortest. It's possible to not have given these initial values. If I've written the code the right way down here, the compiler can see that we're always going to give a value to longest and shortest, but sometimes that doesn't work real well. Okay, so I could have done this. Okay, but until I had all, this is interesting. Now it doesn't like longest or shortest. May not have been initialized, so it didn't like that. So let's do Control Z. Let's back those two up. So these initial values keep the compiler from being angry. Okay. And pretty much it's going to get the job done. And then now we want to print these two things. We've got that. So let's do a little testing. Okay. So first of all, let's just do one string. Okay, if we have one string, it ought to be the longest and the shortest. So let's run as Java application. Please enter the number of strings to be considered. 1. Okay, please enter string 1. Let's say hello. So that's 3, 4, 5 characters. The longest string is 5 long. The shortest string is 5 long. Okay, like we said, if there is only one, it's the everythingest. It's the longest, it's the shortest, it's the best, it's the worst. Okay, let's do it the next time. Let's ask for 2. So let's run it again. Number of strings to be considered, 2. The first one we're going to say hello, and the second one we're going to say goodbye. Okay, so let's see what we got. The longest one is 7, the shortest one is 5. So 5 is appropriate, and that's good. All right. So let's do a larger number. Okay, so let's run it again. Let's say we want to enter 5 strings. Okay, so string 1, let's give it 1x. String 2, 2x's. String 3, 3x's. String 4, 4x's. String 5, 5x's. And let's see what it says. The longest string is 5 long. The shortest string is 1 long. I think it's doing the right job. Okay, now let's just show what happens when we say that we don't want any strings. Okay, we're going to run into trouble. Okay, so let's run this. Okay. Please enter the number of strings to be considered. 0. The longest string is 0 long. The shortest string is 0 long. I don't like that. Okay. Let's run it again, and let's say enter the number of strings to be considered. Minus 100. Same deal. Okay. Okay. What if we took all this code that compares the strings, okay, and if we didn't ask for any, if we didn't ask for at least one string, let's print out a different message. Okay, well, let's do this. So I'm going to get rid of my pseudocode, right? Because, well, it helped me get it written. The function of these code parts is pretty self-explanatory, I think. So extensive comments left in the code I don't think are going to really accomplish a lot. Okay. So let's save this because we're going to make a pretty big change. All right. And this is how we're going to make a change. After we ask for how many strings we would like to enter, if it's 1 or greater, then we just want to do the code the way it is. If it's 0 or less, then we just probably want to say no strings were entered. Okay, so how can we do that? Well, with the Eclipse Java editor, you can do a pretty cool thing. Let's just take, so we want to take all this code, the longest, shortest, all this, we want to take all this code. We only want to do it if the string quantity is 1 or more. Okay, so we want to surround this with an if. So just say surround with, okay, and surround with if statement. Okay, so it says if condition, if the condition's true, it's going to do all of this. So if, highlight that, let's say string quantity greater than or equal to 1. We want to do that. Okay. Now we also want an else. So let's say, go down to the bottom, else, code block, and let's print out something polite. Sys out. You did not request any string processing. Okay. Now, I'll admit that it takes a little bit of a trained eye to see that we have all of this code here inside the if. Okay, but it does. The proper indentation is going to get the job done. Okay. The other thing that we can do is we can use the trick where we go down to the closing brace. We can do this either way. You can go to any brace and put the cursor, click so that you're pointing right after the brace. And it's going to highlight the closing brace that goes with it. So this is the code block for the if part. This is the code block between here and here for the else part. Okay, why don't we save it and give it a run? All right. So let's try 0. All right. So let's say 0. You did not request any string processing. Okay, that's good. Let's run it again and try 1. Okay, please enter the string hello. The longest string is 5. The shortest string is 5. And let's run it again. And we also want it to behave properly for a negative value. Okay. That makes sense. So let's say we want to enter a -9 strings, and we're just going to say you did not request any string processing. Now, we've made this pretty robust, pretty industrial strength. Here's what we've not done. We don't have the tests in to be able to recover from the user not having typed an integer in. Okay, so let's say we're going to run this, and it says, please enter the number of strings to be considered, and I type in my famous hi mom, which is not an integer, and that baby's going to blow up. Okay, now we probably have enough logic that we've learned with our ifs and elses and all that kind of stuff to check for that, but we only want to get so sophisticated so fast. So we're going to let that error come through. All right. And in some later demo, we're going to learn how to check for not getting the right type in from the user. Okay. So we still have a weakness that we're trusting the user to type in integer values, but we've come a long way because they can enter a 0 and they can enter a negative number, and we're going to do something reasonable in each case. So this is a lot like the one that you're going to be doing, which is I think called LongestShortest or something like that. One of the exercises you're going to be doing for chapter 4. And the same kind of strategy is going to work for it. It'll be your opportunity to take this kind of approach and make it work on a related exercise. So having told you all that, I'm going to say bye until next time. Bye-bye.